I want to start today's show off with a round of applause for all of our new subscribers. We reached the number we had to get the watch party off the ground. So thank you to everyone for helping us reach 18,450 subscribers. And if you have not joined the channel yet, go ahead and do so today. What's going on, Broncos country? Coming up on today's show, we're going to run through the latest schedule news pertaining to the Broncos, and then we're going to discuss the idea of signing Zach Ertz potentially, and we'll wrap up the show by checking out, in my opinion, the best NFL mock drafter out there, his first 2024 mock draft. But let's start with the schedule news here, as Adam Schefter reported that on Saturday, December 16th, the Broncos are going to take on the Detroit Lions at 8:15 p.m. Eastern, so 6:15 p.m. Mountain Time. So the Broncos play on Saturday in prime time. Now, just off the top of my head, Denver on Saturday is not a very good combination. They have not won on Saturday in a long time, but hopefully that ends against the Lions. However, we're going to look at the Broncos' upcoming schedule in a little bit and talk about what games they have on tap, because they've got a big game against the Houston Texans this upcoming Sunday, 6-5 before going to the Chargers, 4-7. Of course, you want to win every game on your schedule, but if there is a game to drop, losing a game to the NFC would not be the worst thing in the world, because losses to the NFC do not really impact tiebreakers in the AFC, whereas head-to-head and AFC record, that has a much bigger impact in AFC tiebreakers if it comes down to that at the end of the year. So definitely something to keep an eye on, but the Broncos are going to play a primetime game, NFL Network, Saturday, December 16th in Week 15. Now, switching gears, let's talk about Zach Ertz next up on the show here, because the Cardinals granted Ertz his release, and he is going to look to sign with a contending team. After playing 9 seasons in Philadelphia, it does not take a rocket scientist to connect the dots. Maybe Zach Ertz wants to go back to the Eagles. Dallas Goedert is hurt. It could be a perfect union. There's only one little hiccup with that plan. If you are anyone released after the NFL trade deadline, veteran or not, you go through the waiver wire. And if we're looking at the current waiver wire order right now, there are a lot of teams ahead of Philadelphia that could use some tight end help. Now, I'm not sure if Zach Ertz only wants to play with the Eagles, and if he gets claimed by another team, he's going to throw a hissy fit and refuse to play with them, so they might as well release him so he can go where he wants to. But I could definitely see Denver having an interest in Zach Ertz. Now, this year, he has not been that impactful for the Cardinals. 187 yards, 1 touchdown. Colorado State fans know that Trey McBride is awesome. He was great in Fort Collins, and he's been kicking ass in the desert this year. But Zach Ertz in his career has been phenomenal, whether it was in Philadelphia or his first year with the Cardinals. 7,400 yards, 46 touchdowns. Ertz has had a really successful career. Now, where does Denver fit into this? If Ertz does not end up signing with Philly, I think Denver would make a ton of sense. I could see the Broncos putting a waiver claim in for Zach Ertz. Now, if you put a waiver claim in, you have to have an open roster spot. If you don't have an open roster spot, you have like an hour to either release someone or put a guy on injured reserve. Denver's healthy right now, so I don't see anyone going on over to IR. Now, they could just release someone like, Nate Atkins, the UDFA out of South Carolina. Zach Ertz is probably better, so I could see them going that direction. But I could see Denver having a lot of interest in Ertz, because their tight end room has not really done a whole lot of stuff this year. Like, Adam Trautman by far has been the most productive player, and that's because of his availability more than anything else. He had a phenomenal touchdown grab against the Browns this past Sunday, but Greg Dulcich, the flow and the thighs, well, we haven't seen either one because he's only played 2 games, and after coming back from a hamstring injury, which he was coming back from a previous hamstring injury, can you guess what happened, Coop, immediately, producer Coop? Yeah, here's hamstring again. So I'm not very optimistic that we're going to see Greg Dulcich anytime soon. And if we do see him, you should not count on him being reliable and available. It's unfortunate. It sucks. Injuries suck. But Dulcich is having chronic soft tissue injuries. And those things don't go away very easily. And you usually don't run into them until the end of your career. It sucks that Dulcich is experiencing this in year 2. But do you want Zach Ertz in Denver? Let me know down below in the comment section, yes or no. Now, next up, we're going to check out the Broncos mock draft results. Take a look and see who Denver landed in Dane Brugler's first mock draft for 2024. But really quickly, I want to shout out our awesome sponsor for today's video, Prize Picks. If you plan on watching Thursday Night Football tonight and you're not too jazzed up to watch a fraudulent Seahawks team, well, with Prize Picks, you can stay locked in on the games by picking more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. So here's how it works. Pick, say, 4 players, like I'm doing for tonight's matchup. All you got to do is pick more or less on their projected stats. So for Geno Smith, I'm taking the less on his passing yards. Whereas with CeeDee Lamb and Tony Pollard, I'm picking the more on both of their yardage. And then I like the more on Jason Myers at 1.5 field goals. If you've never made a selection on a kicker before, do it. It's going to change your life. Now, when you go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS, you can get a deposit match up to $100. Now, all that information is in the comments and description of today's video. Check them out. prizepicks.com/CLNS. Use code CLNS. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Now let's switch gears for a moment and talk about Dane Brugler's 2024 mock draft. For starters, mock drafts in November are beyond a crapshoot. I looked at Dane Brugler's mock draft from last year this time. Of the 31 players he had going in round 1, only 19 ended up going in round 1. I'm not saying 19 were correctly picked to the right team or anything. Just 19 for 31 even went in that round to begin with. So mock drafts are never easy. But this far out, take it with a grain of salt. Now let's look at the mock draft, starting from number 1, where Chicago lands Caleb Williams. I think that is the right selection. Marvin Harrison to the Cardinals at 2. No big deal or anything, but last year after the draft ended, my hot take was Marvin Harrison goes number 2, no matter who is selecting. He's that talented. Drake May goes to the Patriots to save Bill Belichick. The Bears take a tackle. Moving along here, Malik Neighbors, I think, is going to be a really good player. I like this selection for the Giants. I also love Jaden Daniels. If he falls to the top 10, don't be surprised. Dallas Turner from Tuscaloosa going to the Titans. Keon Coleman from Tallahassee going to the Saints to pair up with Chris Olave. Moving along a little bit here, the Bengals find their T. Higgins replacement with the wide receiver out of Washington. And finally, we get closer and closer to Denver, and voila, Kool-Aid McKinstry. He goes to the Broncos at number 18. This is their current draft order, current draft spot. So if they keep winning, they're going to pick somewhere closer to 21, 22, 23. Like, here are the rest of the mock draft results. And I'm just showing you this because if the Broncos continue to win, they're not going to be picking 18, right? They're going to be picking much closer to one of these selections here. So just to give you guys a little bit of an appetizer on who could be available in that area. But now let's talk a little bit about Kool-Aid McKinstry, or should I say JaQuincy. Yeah, I like Kool-Aid a lot more. McKinstry, a 3-year starter for Alabama. He would have been a 4-year starter, I think, if he came a year earlier, but also if a guy named Patrick Surtain was not on Alabama's roster. This is who replaced Surtain once he was drafted. McKinstry took over, and like every single other Alabama team, they replaced 5 stars with 5 stars because McKinstry is a 5-star prospect. But here's what Dane Brugler wrote on Kool-Aid. 3 years ago, Patrick Surtain fell into the Broncos' laps and since has grown to be one of the top corners in the league. McKinstry took over Surtain's starting role in Tuscaloosa, and 3 years later, a talented Alabama corner might once again fall to Denver in the first round. Now, Kool-Aid this season has 6 pass breakups, 25 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss. He's pretty lengthy for a corner. If you can find a corner over 6 feet tall, you're going to like that as a GM. I always, pump the brakes on some of the sizes that you get out of the combine and things like that, and pro days, like drooling over hand size and whatnot. But if there is one measurement to take a close look at for corners, the difference of 6 foot and 6'1", I know some people say it doesn't matter, size doesn't matter, but to Corners, it does, because that's the difference between a pass breakup or the ball going just over your fingertip for a 50-yard reception. Ultimately, Denver needs a new starting corner opposite of Patrick Surtain. Damari Mathis got benched a third of the way into the season. Fabian Moreau has done a really good job of filling in, but he's an NFL vet. I don't think Denver plans to have him be their long-term answer at CB2. Jaquan McMillan has been fantastic this year. I want to keep him where he's doing well. That's in the slot. I think moving him over to outside corner, you might be getting a bit greedy. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So keep 29 in the slot. And how cool would it be for Patrick Surtain and Kool-Aid McKinstry to reunite? I don't know if they actually played together in Alabama. It doesn't sound like they did. So not reunite, but just a pair of Crimson Tide players playing opposite of one another on defense. That, to me, would be an incredible secondary. Add in Justin Simmons, hopefully a healthy Caden Stearns, and you've got yourself a really good defense on the back end. But what position do you think is the Broncos' biggest need? Is it corner? Is it defensive end? I mean, Baron Browning, Nick Bonito, Jonathan Cooper, that's a really good, formidable pass rush right there. I would say defensive line on the interior. Like, you're not running it back with Jonathan Harris and Mike Purcell next year. DJ Jones, I don't know if he'll be returning. He's got 1 year left on his deal. They could cut him if they wanted to. So what position do you think is the Broncos' biggest need right now? My dream pick, I'd go with Brock Bowers. Tight ends are tough to project where they go because you got to also take into account not just team needs, but where teams value certain positions, right? You see quarterbacks, tackles, and edge rushers and corners go top 10 more than any other position group pretty much. That's not an accident. NFL GMs value those positions as cornerstone pieces, right? The name of the game is to get a quarterback. All right, after that, protect the quarterback. You draft a tackle. After that, stop the quarterback. You get an edge rusher. After that, force incomplete passes. You get a good corner. So Brock Bowers might be better than a lot of players that go ahead of him, but teams might not feel that tight end is all that impactful. So if Bowers does end up slipping, with Greg Dulcich not looking like a guy you can count on for the future, Bowers would be a home run pick. All right, that's going to do it for us on this edition of the Broncos Breakdown. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday night and your weekend, and we'll see you guys on Sunday for our Broncos-Texans watch party.